the great Rick Bozich with us. Rick, Indiana picked up a gigantic recruit last Friday, Mackenzie Mbako. Most people thought that he was probably going to head to Kansas, but that was just based on nothing. Toward the end of the day, a friend pointed out that of all the publications, not one had crystal balled him to Kansas. And
really?
And I was like, really? I was the same one. I was like, really? And that resonated with me. And then this was at like 5 o'clock, and he just kept saying it. I'm like, okay. And then finally at like 5:59, I sent out a tweet that goes in the morning. I said, this morning I was feeling Kansas, but at 6 o'clock, I'm feeling Indiana. And unfortunately, I didn't know that. I think he had sent it out about 8 minutes prior to that because I was expecting it at 6. But anyway, Indiana lands Mackenzie Mbako, a huge get in so many different ways. First of all, on the court, of course, what that's going to do to the team, but also to perceptions of national pundits, to perception of potential recruits. It just sends a message that has a nice ripple effect.
You're right. I mean, and the message it sends is Indiana can be a player in any recruit that it wants to be. Doesn't mean you're going to get them all. You're probably, if you're recruiting the really elite guys, you're going to lose more than you get. But message that, a guy from New Jersey or a guy from Pittsburgh, like Hood Shafino or Charlotte, wherever he ended up calling his hometown, they're all in play. And Mike Woodson's not going to back away from any fights. And he seems to be really good in short-term recruitments instead of long-term recruitments. This was really went down over a couple of weeks. And I think if you can get a guy on campus where the player and his parents talk to Coach Woodson, I think he's really good at making him feel comfortable and selling what his opportunities are, both on the court and off the court in Indiana. And it was impressive. I mean, I saw this kid play. I think we talked about this briefly last week. Saw him play in Westfield last year at the Nike EYBL event, and I saw him play in Louisville at the EYBL event. And I went up there to see DJ Wagner, who was his teammate on the New Jersey Scholars. And they also had a 7-foot guy named Aaron Bradshaw. Well, those two guys both went to Kentucky. But I remember when I was watching them play, I was like, DJ Wagner's really good. Aaron Bradshaw kind of comes and goes. Who's that guy? And Purvis Ellison, the former Louisville Star, is the director of that program. And he said, don't worry about him. He's going to Duke. That's Mbako. And I said, he's good. I said, yeah, he is good. And what I liked about him is when you watch AAU basketball, he defended, he rebounded, he shared the ball. A lot of times in AAU basketball, guys don't do that. They are out to get points, and it's like, if I make a mistake, I'm on to the next possession. He played basketball the way the basketball should be played, and it's a big pickup, really is.
Well, and I've said Indiana's been close on a lot of big time recruits. They're in their Final Four. They're in their Final Six.
Filipowski, TJ Power, on and on, yeah.
And I'm like, they have to win these battle. They have to get to win one to start some momentum, because even though they have gotten recruits, I have not felt Indiana had momentum, recruiting momentum. And I think this is actually the beginning of potential momentum here, because now you've got guys specifically watching. Yeah, I know that Jalen Hood-Schifino, that's going to mean something, but landing this guy was a little more unexpected. So what happens to him? Liam McNeely is watching from Montverde Academy, same position. He wants to come and fill that spot when Mbako leaves for the NBA next year. But there's other guys, the spot that's still open for Indiana. That I've said that now, instead of Indiana courting people, there probably will be players that are more apt to being more receptive to looking at Indiana on their own. It will be easier.
Dylan Harper's one. There's been a lot of speculation in the last week about Dylan Harper, the kid from New Jersey. I saw the one article on Rivals where they told Dylan Harper that Mbako had committed, and he goes, "It's Indiana, isn't it?" I had a feeling he was going to go there. Coach Woodson will be good for him. That was pretty impressive. That was endorsing a dude going to Indiana. And I used in Dylan Harper's Final Five. But you're right. The 24 and 25 classes are a lot stronger than the 23 class. The staff's had an extra year to be there and develop relationships with these kids when they were sophomores and freshmen. And you would think that they would gain momentum. And, they've been to back-to-back tournaments. If you can make the tournament again this year, it'd be the first time IU's made 3 straight NCAA tournaments since 2008. And you change the perception of the program. So it's like, happy to make the tournament, to like, yeah, going to get a pretty good seed to the tournament, so like, going to make the tournament every year. I mean, that's the perception. That's the way your program should be. It's like making the tournament every year is what you expect.
Yeah, and now making a
run, yeah.
in the and it's going a little further in IHSA, and who knows, with the way the tournament is and what we saw last year, there's no team that is probably, if you're good, like Indiana should be next year at that level. I mean, there's a lot more of them, but there's also a lot more teams that can make it to the Final Four, and Indiana could be one of those teams next year. I don't want to say that Indiana's a Final Four team, but that when they fill this other roster spot, man, that who knows how good they can be. And we've seen that all of these teams that are able to rise, San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, no one expected them to go to the Final Four at the start of the year. So who knows what's going to happen with the quality of this team.
No, and the roster's got plenty of pieces to compete in the Big Ten and beyond. And I think what is fair to say is last year, as it was going on, I feel more comfortable saying it now, is that that team was hurt pretty dramatically by not having Xavier Johnson. And the one guy they couldn't have lost was Trace Jackson Davis, but the second worst guy for them to lose is Xavier Johnson. And it showed up in the Miami game because he was their best on-the-ball defender. And I don't think Miami would have just had its way on offense the way it did if Xavier Johnson's on the floor, because he put pressure on the ball handler and he competed. And, he'll be back next year. So it's his team, basically. I mean, 6th-year senior who's the point guard. I mean, it's his team. And from reading his comments, he's pumped about some of these new dudes they brought in, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and then you mentioned a minute ago, Dylan Harper mentioning a recruit. When you have a recruit that you're recruiting, throw out a positive thing like that, man, that's got to be, you're thinking, dude, he's got to be thinking Indiana in the back of his head.
Right, and he does. I mean, I think they're in the hunt there. And you mentioned Liam McNeely. I mean, with the pipeline from Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino, they've got a good relationship with the people at Montverde. And Hood-Schifino, didn't IU put out a tweet yesterday with Hood-Schifino talking about how good IU and Mike Woodson were for his development, and how, I have friends that go other places and the coaches are good to them, but when they get there, they're whole different people. But Mike Woodson was the same person throughout the whole time. He treated me with respect and stuff like that. I mean, stuff like that is really that's kids read that stuff. I mean, they get a lot of their information on social media from other players.
And the reasons, because we've heard Hunter Dickinson's a perfect example of being told things that are not the case. And that's a superstar saying that. When you have a superstar saying that, first of all, that's a horrible look for your own school, but it gives players pause to think. And so Indiana, that's a great stamp of approval for guys to not worry about that. And again, Indiana needs to get back into a place where kids are clamoring to go to Indiana, so Indiana's not doing as much chasing, and that ship is turning right now. I mean, it's hard to turn the Titanic, but he's getting the Titanic turned without question. That thing is turning around.
Yeah, and it seems like they have good chemistry and a good vibe on the staff. I mean, Kenya Hunter and Yasir Rosemond and Brian Walsh are doing a lot of the legwork, and got to give credit to Jordan Hulls and Adam Howard. I mean, I heard one of the things that helped was a piece of the puzzle was when then Mbako visited IU that they had a Nigerian flag waiting for him in the locker room, and he posed with the Nigerian flag wrapped around him because he thought it was really cool. And little things like that, little touches like that, show that the coaching staff is doing its homework and putting a personal touch on every recruitment. And recruitment's building a relationship with a guy, getting people to trust you and believe in you in a short amount of time. It's a sales job, and you have to be able to do that. And I think that Mike Woodson can do that. And then you throw in the fact that, Carmelo Anthony said, "Hey, this dude coached me. He coached me hard. He's a good dude, but on the court, he will coach you hard." That doesn't hurt. You start adding up those little pieces, and your pile gets pretty high of reasons for guys to go to a school.
And everyone thinks it's about the money today, and there is, and yes, that plays a part. It was for Hunter Dickinson, but that's a different scenario. He had been at a school for a while who had promised things that he didn't get. Plus, he knew that was not going to be a good situation at Michigan next year. They're going to suck. And it hadn't been great thus far anyway. Now he can go to a place, win a national championship, and get paid out unbelievable money. But there are a lot of other guys out there who are hearing stories and being recruited and being talked to. And so Indiana is really setting themselves up to be looked at as a place that you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, don't they have 3 major collectives who are contributing to the cause? Some of them are run by former players who can also give firsthand experiences of what it's like to play at IU. And yeah, I mean, having Hood Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis drafted next month, that'll help. Again, you're right. It's like a big ship. You can't just change course overnight. It takes time. But Mike Woodson is leading in the right direction, and it's got to see what the next step is. I mean, this summer will be important because even though they did get Mbako, there was kind of a long dry spell after they got Cups and Newton and Renew to get another recruit. Hopefully, for Woodson's sake, that getting a guy like this will get the 24 class more receptive to what he has to say.